That's where the French media and politicians got lukewarm. They say we've been lying about Russia for a year and a half, and how can we ask them for help now? We're all going to die. Shouted out on France 2 in a program about the Times, Eric Brunet, an LSI journalist. To quote, France, along with the entire West, is being sucked into the maelstrom, into the abyss, into the abyss. We're trapped. One wrong step can kill our future. Echoing Eric on RMC channel, Dominique de Villepin, former French Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. If the words of the first can still be explained somehow, writing it off to impulsiveness and impressionability of the creative nature. It's a bit of a slip-up, lads. It's all right. Then the words of a politician who has been burned out can't be called ill-conceived. But what you can't deny them both is sincerity. Both believe what they say. Eric Brunet, first on the left of the ones facing us. François Allen is on the right. Eric Brunet, we are in a tectonic confrontation right now. We, France, if you want Israel, are in our democratic essence very fragile. It may seem funny when I talk about the fragility of Israel, but it is. Israel is a democratic drop in the sea of the Arab world. Democracy is very fragile, and now there are tectonic shifts taking place, and I'm scared. In this colossal confrontation, for the first time in history, France is in a vulnerable infirmity. What's rolling into France now is a world wave. And we with our little standards and attempts to defend our values are ridiculous. We're just gonna get washed away. Of course we have to fight. Of course we have to fight. But we're all going to die. End of article. And the first wave of popular anger raised by these words almost washed Eric Brunet himself off the screen. Among those outraged in the France 2 studio was former French President François Allen, one of those who brought France to this helpless state. No wonder this panic attack made it into the pages of Figaro. Her victim, Eric Brunet, the LCI anchor, is a man far from the last in the world of French media and until recently has always steadfastly followed the party line. He has not been seen in connections defaming him, i.e. in sympathies to Russia. Even on the contrary, for the last year and a half he has been diligently, if he didn't throw dirt on our country, he didn't prevent the guests of his programs from doing so. But after Hamas attacked Israel, it was as if Eric had been replaced. First, he erected an unhandsome monument to the Russian president, called him the emperor of the narrative of the global south, almost the pale-faced leader of all Redskins. And a week ago, the former trustworthy person gave a rant to invited experts, journalists and himself in his live program. LSA was too shy to post the program on its YouTube channel, but its recording was at the disposal of Andrei Burkov, a great host of Sud Radio, who with undisguised pleasure reproduced a fragment of the speech of his colleague, who found the strength and courage to publicly admit his own mistakes. Here's a quote from the show. Eric Brunet addresses the experts and journalists of the LSA. I solemnly accuse all of you present in the studio right now and myself along with you, that for a year and a half we have been explaining to viewers that Putin has very little left, that he has 25 rucks and will definitely not make it to next weekend. We said that international sanctions would kill the Russian economy, that the opposition was about to appear in Russia, that without oligarchs everything in Russia would collapse, that the Russian economy was finished, that Putin had no support anywhere, neither in Russia nor abroad. This is where Andrei Burkov adds with a smile, right, and you also said that Putin was suffering from dementia, that just a little bit more and the Russian people would be bunched up, that the Russian troops would never take a single city, that they'd all die there, and it would be just great. And they quoted Economy Minister Bruno Le Maire, who has been bringing the Russian economy to its knees for years. End of stats. Further continues Eric Brunet, but instead of everything we promised, which we see in reality, Putin has become the idol of the South. The Arab world is shouting bravo Putin, long live Putin the mediator, long live Putin the negotiator, he will bring peace to our land. End quote. That's the twist, they added a Middle Eastern idol to the title Emperor of the Global South. But what led to Eric's idolatry? Basically, the same thing that set former Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin's mind right, namely fear. Fear of the future because the West can no longer influence the present. Villepin almost shouted about it in the RMC studio, scaring the hell out of the leading Russophobe Apollon de Malherbe. Villepin says, Hamas has trapped us all with its outrageous cruelty. We are all being sucked into the vortex of violence. A strike on Gaza will inevitably trigger a strike on Israel by numerous extremist groups with disastrous consequences for the entire region. The world is divided, the conflict in Eastern Europe has shown this. The West finds itself alone against the rest of the world, we call it the Global South. End quote. And not so long ago, Villepin was laughing at our white leader, the emperor of the narrative of the Global South, the idol of the Middle East and simply the great spirit of Manitou, when he told their then unwise partners about the war of civilization, about the coming 100 years of Western loneliness. Vilpin continues, but beyond the external risks, the uncontrolled escalation in the Middle East, our politicians need to take into account that there are deep divisions in France as well, post-colonial, Islamist, emigrant, and these issues threaten to exacerbate the conflict in France itself. End quote. I just say, Dominic, it's like a civil war in there. To quote further, an aesthetic drama is unfolding before us. Yes, Hamas has Islamist goals, but Israel with its extreme right-wing government has also fallen into the trap of Zionism. The conflict takes on a biblical messianic character. Look at the statements of the King of Jordan. They weren't like this before. Look at Erdogan's statements. He wants to be the leader of the Muslim world. Until 3 weeks ago, he was a friend of Israel. Everything we have done towards peace in the Middle East could collapse in 1 minute. Israel's response to an attack in the form of a military operation in Gaza could kill our future. End quote. Well, how can you not think of Eric Brunet and his, "We're all going to die"? Yvel Pen is not dramatizing the situation for the West and especially France. Israel's invasion of Gaza, the massive loss of Arab civilian life, and the threat of Hamas defeat would very likely entail Shiite Hezbollah entering the war as well. Arabs also don't need to explain that Hezbollah isn't even a proxy for Iran, it is Iran. And to stand aside, to allow a Shiite country to dress up in the costume of the main defender of the Sunni Palestinians is unbearable, not for Saudi Arabia, as the main Arabs, and not for Erdogan, who, although he is not an Arab, claims to be the main defender of the Sunnis. And God only knows how they'll behave. Well, unless Supreme Manitou is still in the know. What will the rest of the Arab countries, whose rulers are not interested in a Palestinian state but whose peoples are extremely sensitive to the suffering of their Palestinian brothers, do? Smells of an anti-Israel, and potentially anti-Western Arab coalition. But back to the show. Presenter's question. But who is to blame for what is happening? Vilpin replies, that's not the point. We're all facing history right now. No one can influence the situation alone, not even the US. We now live in a new world, and we are no longer its gurus. We can't speak from a position of strength because we're not in that position. We're not gendarmes anymore. We can't run the world. We need everyone's help, absolutely everyone's help. Here host Apollon de Malherbe, who has genuine horror in her voice, says. And what, even the Russians? Should we ask the Russians for help? That's the face she asked it with. Vilpin's answer. By the way, yesterday he was our ardent opponent and demanded Russia's defeat, and he suddenly became a pragmatist. We need everyone's help, even the Russians. I am not saying that we should go to them ourselves, but if they can contribute to calming any of the parties, we should not refuse their help. The silence of the Arab states has misled us. The Palestinian goal has not disappeared from the international agenda, and now it has mobilized the people of these countries. 9 million Israelis living in 20,000 square meters against 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide. The forces are too unequal. And in general, the West needs to stop relying only on its own strength. Neither Israel nor the West can win this war against terrorism. We need the world's help. End of stats. Wow. And the West could use our help.